Welcome to this new episode of Wild Voices. And today we are welcoming Kathleen Dudzinski. She's a researcher that has been studying behavior in cetaceans for many years and is also the new Wolfgang Kiesling Prize awardee. And
Yes.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Very honored.
How do you feel about this prize?
I feel delighted. I feel elated. I was very surprised, but very pleased. It will allow us to reach a much wider audience with our conservation message, which is very exciting.
Yeah, it's great. This is one of the reasons of the Kiesling Prize is really to acknowledge the people that is working in conservation.
Right.
You especially work in marine conservation cetaceans, trying to understand how they behave and communicate, and how is this process going to be useful for you in improving your work of research?
Well, as you mentioned, the research that I've been doing for a few decades looks at dolphin-to-dolphin communication, and that's what it's been the whole time. But my research is also co-funded by ecotourism, or bringing students or adults into the field. But the number of people that can come to the field is very small. And so we have a lot of different educational platforms. The Dolphin Communication Project was founded on two goals, research and education. And our mission is to promote the scientific study of dolphins and inspire their conservation. And so we do that through webinars, podcasts, papers, general papers, presentations, workshops, etc. And so the Kiesling Prize, the Wolfgang Kiesling International Prize for Species Conservation, of which I am the 2025 winner, will allow me and DCP to take our message to a wider audience, to take it to the giant screen, to take it to the small screen, and to share what we're learning, about dolphin communication, whether it's small dolphins or large dolphins.
Mm-hmm. You are also one of the researchers that cooperate with Loro Parque Fundación. Zoos are also very important to support this kind of work like the one that you do with the dolphins.
Yes.
And I would like to talk a little bit about what, for the researchers that are doing work in the field, what is really the most important or the most relevant thing that is coming from zoos, not only funding, but maybe also opportunity to work with the animals?
The zoos are vital to not just caring for the animals and making sure that we have certain species into the future. It is also the link where people can come, the general public can come and meet these animals. As much as video and film is a connection for someone, being in the presence of those animals, seeing them, being close enough, maybe not quite to touch them, but to be in their presence, is much different. It's a closer connection for people. And so that's one way that zoos provide that, is just for the general public. But in the support that zoos and aquariums have for researchers to allow us to come in and observe these animals, which Loro Parque has done for us in observing the killer whales, but also in other facilities to observe these animals 24/7, to be able to watch them interact with one another, and that's behavior. But then to study their acoustics, their vocalizations, to look at their physiology, to look at their health, to understand the welfare of these animals socially and physically and health-wise, gives us a window into their world, into how they communicate and how they interact. And for our research, for a couple of decades, I started studying small wild dolphins, using the same methods to observe and document among them, it didn't really exist when I started doing that research. And I took those methods and applied it to groups of animals in managed care, both in natural lagoons and in man-made pools, finding no difference. So we use the same methods at all locations. We can collect data at each site and then compare those data directly, because we're collecting it and analyzing it the same way. And we're doing the same with the killer whales. We're able to observe those animals in managed care, to observe them from above and from underwater. And then we get data from the wild, from above by drone, and from underwater with cameras to observe them. and use the same methods. And we're finding no difference between large and small dolphins, and we're finding no difference between wild and managed care, whatever the species.
It is very interesting, and I was really enlightened by your discovery on the subtle touches and contact that the dolphins and the killer whales are using to communicate. Please explain a little bit, because it's before we knew the animals from the surface, but now you have opened a new window to the understanding of the animals.
Yes. The study of dolphins from the surface, it gives you one picture. But when you go underwater, you actually see animal-to-animal interaction. So we can look at body contact. So body-to-body contact, like giving a person a hug, that would be a type of a contact. One of the different types of behaviors I've studied for 18 years is pectoral fin contact. So the flipper. How does a dolphin use its pectoral fin or flipper to contact another dolphin? Or does another dolphin swim into a pectoral fin? So if you have an itch on your back and you can't quite reach it, you might ask somebody, hey, would you scratch my back? And that's similar when you have different dolphins interacting and initiating, same as people. But how they use the pectoral fin has different meanings. So we've seen young males start using pectoral fin contact anywhere on their bodies as young animals all the way through adulthood. And that helps them set up their friendships, their relationships, and then maintain them over time. But young females don't. They don't share that pectoral fin contact when they're young. But what we've confirmed is that they do share that when they're adults. So pregnant females will share it more, lactating females will share it more, females that don't have a calf at the time might share it more. So it's also a way for us now to identify reproductive status, which we could confirm that in managed care, but now we can look at the wild data and say, hey, that'll give us a clue as to what's going on in their reproductive cycle. Mm-hmm. And we've also documented pair swim positions. So the most known positions are infant position, where mom is here and the calf swims just under and below mom, close to the mammary glands to get a quick snack. But echelon is where the calf is up here by the dorsal fin or the fin on the back. And that we see a lot in young calves. They're learning to, use their body and get away, and they're close to mom and they're camouflaged in. Well, those behaviors are well known for moms and calves, those positions. But what we've confirmed is that adults, juveniles, mixed sex, both same-sex pairs use those behaviors, those positions the same, maybe the same way, but maybe a little bit differently. Might indicate courtship or friendship between individuals. Mm-hmm. But we've also identified 4 other pair swim positions that seem to be very important socially. And so we're teasing that out. That insight has told us that, hey, males mentor younger males. So subadults and adults will take young males under their wing, and they'll start learning some of the behaviors that they'll need when they're older. There's object play, and there's a variety of other behaviors. I could talk all day about some of this.
But it's nice. It's really very interesting, because all of these new behaviors that were absolutely unnoticed before are giving you the opportunity to compare the social behavior between animals that are under managed care and in the wild. Yes. And you have found that behaviorally, the animals are doing basically the same?
They are. We, by collecting the data the same way and then observing and analyzing the data the same way, 10 years ago, I had the first papers out on small dolphins using the behaviors the same way. And we had to support that a little in the scientific literature and give a little pushback. But now it's just, we see that. Now we have data for killer whales, both in managed care and in the wild, and we're seeing the same things. So how they will swim next to one another, or how they rub against one another. The killer whale pectoral fin is huge, so watching them use that with each other and where on the bodies they pet is the same. Mm-hmm. It's really being able to see these subtleties, spending a lot of time underwater, spending a lot of time observing the videos, gives insight into the subtleties. And what it seems also is that a slight movement, one way or the other, can have a significant meaning. And being able to watch that much, it gives you such an insight into how they interact and how they, maybe they're just turning slightly or they're looking. They always know where each other is.
So that will strongly not support the idea that the animals, when they are in managed care, they don't have social relationships, or they are forming artificial groupings, or all of this criticism that zoos are receiving are then not supported by your findings.
Correct. Having individuals together to interact with creates your family. We've seen that in humans most recently. It's not necessarily the family you're born into, and the strongest bond, if we're going to go down that way, the strongest bond is mom-calf, but then calves leave mom. Mm-hmm. Some come back, some don't, but they form other relationships. And so that's what you're seeing with these individuals. And if you give them the choice of who they can interact with, and maybe sometimes when they can do those interactions, you're going to see these natural behaviors between individuals. Mm-hmm. And but what's interesting in the literature, specifically for killer whales, is historically the two groups of animals that were most studied were in the Pacific Northwest, near Canada and Vancouver, in that area. And those killer whales were thought to be very long-term stable matrilines. And they are. But now we're getting more and more research from other areas of the globe that say, hey, wait a minute, these killer whales are more fission-fusion, which is like chimpanzees, like humans, like small dolphins. So small groups come together and separate, come together and separate. And they're not focused on one type of prey. There are some killer whales that are, but not the rest. They're opportunistic, which suggests, again, more support that there's similarity across all dolphin species, whether they're small or large.
So what it was considered traditionally the description for the killer whale society is an exception, mm-hmm. and not the norm in the killer whale societies worldwide.
That's what it seems to be, yeah.
Yeah, and that's really important because zoological facilities have been criticized because of a model of mm-hmm. ideal society for orcas that is not what is happening. It's very
specific, yeah. and there are different hypotheses as to why that developed, but it's generally what we're seeing is it's very fission-fusion, and so these animals, like small dolphins, need to have the behaviors that they can use to make sure they're communicating, hey, we have a strong friendship, so that pec-fin contact and sharing contact with each other solidifies that friendship between individuals. But at the same time, anyone else outside watching knows, oh, they're close, they have a friendship, they have a bond. Okay, we know that. So it depends. When you're looking at communication, you have the signals that are used, but it depends on who's receiving those signals for what that message and the meaning are between individuals. So the individuals using the behaviors have one set of information they're sharing, but observers, whether it's other animals or humans, can watch it a certain way to get an idea of what that relationship means to those individuals.
Mm-hmm. And other of the common criticism to the zoological facilities holding cetaceans is that the groups are hyper-aggressive. There is a lot of aggression. Yeah. In your thousands of hours of observing animals under managed care and the world, yeah. Have you seen this hyper-aggression? And have you found different rates of aggression between those two situations?
Well, first of all, I don't know what the definition for hyperaggression is. I haven't been able to find it anywhere. I've asked. No one's answered that question for me. So coming from the science perspective and what's in the literature and looking at affiliative behavior and aggressive behavior, and then in between you have agonistic behavior, because sometimes it's hard to identify rough play from fighting. And anyone who has a dog or cat knows that sometimes play can get a little rough and then you back down a little, and that kind of thing. And I can say in the thousands of hours of observing wild dolphins and those in managed care, probably on one hand, I can count the number of times I have witnessed true aggression where somebody was just really upset and went at somebody else. And none of those observations, from my observations, were in managed care. They were in the wild. Mm-hmm. So I haven't seen that in a managed care setting. I've seen rough play. I've seen where somebody might get a little out of hand and then they de-escalate it. And with most other animals, they know that they can really inflict damage. So I think they have other subtle cues, subtle gestures that sort of say, okay, back off. It's getting a little much for me. And we have that, but we also use words with different people that we can say it. And sometimes we have other actions that we use as well.
And also there are some reconciliatory behaviors. So the animals need to reestablish the social bonds, because this is a social group that has to overcome this problem. So you also have found this reconciliation.
Yes. We've seen the use of pectoral fin contact. When one dolphin places a pec fin between the dorsal fin and the tail, sort of on the side, it's called the peduncle or the tail stalk. That is an indication of, hey, I'm making up. I want your help later on. So are we cool? Being very anthropomorphic, but that's the best way to do it. Or even some pair swims, where we've seen animals go into a parallel, slightly staggered back, so not necessarily even, but slightly back. It's kind of like, hey, we're okay, right? We're still cool, that kind of thing. And those kinds of behaviors have also been seen in chimps, they've been seen in ravens, they've been seen in wolves, that all social animals have these signals that helps mediate their society. Dolphins are no different.
Yeah. And coming back a little bit to the beginning, the Wolfgang Kiesling Prize is handed by Global Humane, which is an organization basically focused on the animal welfare.
Yes.
And animal welfare is also very important in zoos, and your research, this detailed knowledge on the behavior of the animals is also going to be an important tool to measure animal welfare. How that can be helpful for the zoos to understand or to measure the welfare of the animals?
I think it's important for zoos to focus on the behavior of their animals, to spend time watching the natural behavior of the animals. And when I say natural, I mean the day-to-day, just what's going on for their normal behavior, and to focus on documenting as much as possible some of that normal behavior, because that gives you a record that you can fall back on when somebody says, oh no, that's not right, that shouldn't be happening that way. It's like, no, we've been documenting, we have this. But it also gives the staff a chance to really watch their animals and understand when they're having a good day, or maybe they have a little day that's off, or, we're all social animals, if I include humans and I included the other animals, and you have some days where you might not want to do everything that is expected of you. You might want to take a day slow or move on to something else. And being able to observe the animal's behavior but record it and have a record to know what's there, that allows you to assess back and say, is this a pattern? Is this something that hasn't happened before? Is this something new? But also being aware of the animal's behavior, and most of the trainers or keepers that I've spoken to are aware of their animal's behavior. You get an idea of, okay, what's out of the ordinary and what doesn't match with what we expect. And the benefit with animals in managed care is you can go in and look at their health. You can look and see, is there something there? Is there a behavioral indicator that suggests maybe there's some underlying condition? And that's something that gives you an early detection signal for something like that. And then taking those observations, if you can link a behavior to something like that that's health related, you can use that for critically endangered species in the wild, because it can give you, you don't necessarily have the ability to collect the animals, but if you're watching their behavior and you see something that's off that matches what's been observed, it can give you an idea that maybe there's something else we can do to help the health of these animals.
Also, there are some researchers that are promoting the idea that having a diverse behavior, as much different behaviors an animal can display, that is related with the improved welfare. So this can be also having this subtle way in which you can really distinguish many behaviors that were unnoticed before in dolphins, are also giving an opportunity for the zoos to understand better the welfare of the animals and measure in a better way.
Well, there's also the idea recently is that, do you have to see all of the natural wild behaviors in an animal that's in a managed care setting? You might not. I mean, they don't have to go out and forage and hunt for fish. They'd spend a lot of time doing that. So therefore, they don't necessarily have to travel great distances. Well, that means that there's more time for them to socialize. There's more time for them to be cognitively enriched, and the trainers can work with them that way. You can set up social groupings for the animals to do that, but you can also coordinate with enrichment items. You can coordinate with challenging mental puzzles, looking at cognitive abilities in the animals. How do they think? How do they process information? And understanding that can also inform how we protect them in the wild, because we can't manage the behavior of a wild animal, but we can manage human activity around that behavior based on how we're observing those animals.
And there's also another behavior that can indicate a lack of welfare in that, which is the abnormal repetitive behaviors. In your experience, are those frequent in managed care facilities and are comparable with what can be found in the wild?
What do you mean by abnormal reproductive behaviors?
Repetitive behaviors.
Oh, repetitive.
Abnormal repetitive behaviors.
I was like, I don't know abnormal reproductive. Sorry, it was just me.
No, it was probably it was me.
Yeah, so. No, that's okay. So I don't think the term that I often hear is stereotypies.
Stereotypic.
I don't think repetitive behavior is necessarily a bad thing. Animals I've observed in the wild, for example, at Mikura Island in Japan, the dolphins will rest near the coastline. And when they do that, they're swimming back and forth, which is a repetitive behavior. And the way they do that, it's stereotypical. But they're resting. They're not necessarily going to just stop and lie on the bottom. They may stop and hang at the surface, which has also been considered something that's not normal. But I've seen it in the wild. I've seen it in the Bahamas. I've seen it in Japan. I've seen it in every other place where I've studied wild animals. So I think you have to place this, if you see a stereotypic behavior, if you see a repetitive behavior, it has to be placed in context to get an idea, okay, what's going on? So certainly, if you see something that's repetitive, well, watch it for a bit. What else is going on? Is there a context that's going on? If it's in managed care, is there something going on with the people above water on the side of the pool, et cetera, that it's the animals watching them? Or are they trying to get someone's attention? Or is there something else? Because that's what I've seen whenever I've seen a repetitive behavior. And seeing a pattern is not the same as seeing a stereotypy, because an animal may do a couple of swims in a certain way, but then change it up and do a couple of swims. Well, is it also rubbing on the pool wall? Because we've seen dolphins, especially killer whales in the Pacific Northwest, have rubbing beaches, and they're sloughing skin, so they're going to rub to get that off. Well, that's the same type of rubbing that we've seen in the animals. If you can go onto the live cameras and watch it, and it's like, well, yeah, I see it there, and I see the same behaviors here. So to me, that's not a stereotypic or a negative behavior. It's part of the repertoire. We're just seeing it out of context when we're taking a snapshot and looking at it. I often get, to the Dolphin Communication Project, people will send us emails and show a picture. What's going on here? Or, I saw this on this day when I was out kayaking. And it's very difficult to define a behavior or say it from a still photo or from a description. But that's the whole point, is if you're seeing the different behaviors, what's going on around that? And that will inform our understanding of some of those behaviors.
Mm-hmm. So with your experience and in your professional perspective, do you believe that the animals in managed care, cetaceans in managed care particularly, can be kept and thrive normally?
Yes, 100%. In fact, I think they should be allowed to do all of their natural, normal behaviors, and that includes reproduction, because reproduction is a natural behavior. Is it the act of reproduction? Is it the ability to gestate and to have a calf and carry it to term and then have that calf? I have a paper that's out, it's pending, on the valuable nature of offspring. So offspring are important, not just to the mom, but to the entire social group. And we've shown that with the data that we have, is that you have larger group sizes, you have more social interaction, more contact, less spacing. Everybody wants to hang there. And in some of the groups I've seen, I have adult males that are babysitting and playing with the calves. And the male seems to delight in it, the calf seems to delight in it. And this is an enriching behavior. And in 3 decades of observing wild and managed care dolphins, both small and large species, I have not seen anything in managed care that I haven't also seen in the wild, and vice versa. So for me, there's no difference as long as you have a well-managed, socially good group. When you have that. And all of the places where I've studied them, the animals are in receipt of excellent welfare, and they interact. They have choice and control, and I think that's important.
Well, thank you, Kathleen. It has
Thank
been
you.
really very interesting conversation. I've learned a lot, and I hope
Thank you.
that everybody that sees this podcast can really understand and know more about really your profound knowledge on animal behavior, on cetacean behavior.
Thank you.
Thank you for being with us, and I hope
Thank you so
we
much.
can do it in the future again.
Yes, we'll have to get more results, and we
Yeah.
can share more on what's there.
Thank you. Thank you very much.